morning, friends! So we have just finished up our morning milking chores and we are ready for the project of the day. It is basically spring now here in Texas. We've passed our last frost date, and so it's time to get the garden going. But before we go over to the garden to get our big irrigation project underway, we need to announce the winners of the name contest. We had amazing turnout with the names, and they were so good, you guys. Thank you. But we wanted to tell you who the name winners are. So first up, the name of Vin's Doling.
The name we decided on is Rosabelle, and she's just a cutie. Thank you to Dee, because Rosabelle is such a good name.
That's right. And Dee, Oswin has been making some scrubbies for you as a big thank you for such a great name. We love it. All right, and then over here in the buck pen, we have our new buck, and we got so many great names. You guys are amazing at this. So a huge thank you to everyone who had names for our new buck. We sort of bent the rules a little bit because I got so many good names. And so instead of one winner, we sort of have three. So the name that we went with for our new buck is Blue Moon Bandit. Blue kind of describes his color. He's a black with a lot of roaning. He has moon spots. That's where the moon came from. And we just loved the name Bandit. So most of the time, his pen name is going to be Bandit, but his official registered name is Back 10 Blue Moon Bandit. And so we have many thanks to pass out. We got the name Blue from Pam. So a huge thank you to you, Pam, for the name Blue. We got Moon from Michelle. So thank you for that one. And then we got Bandit from Logan. So thank you, all three of you, for such great names. We have soap sets going out to all of our winners because I just couldn't pick. I wanted a great combination name, and those registered names need to be fun. So thank you to everyone. We so appreciate it, and we will have more giveaways like this in the future because this was awesome to hear your input. All right, now off to the garden. It's project time. So before we actually get to the garden, let's go in the kitchen and sketch this thing out real quick. I always like to start with the plan just so I have a general idea of what we're going to do in the garden. It definitely makes the work outside in the hot sun go a lot faster when you have a general idea of where your connections are going to be, where your hoses need to be, and you know that you won't miss any steps that way. Now off to the garden for real. The first step for this project was to cut all our pieces and do what we call a dry fit. That means we're fitting everything together before we add the glue. We used about 60 feet of 1/2-inch PVC pipe, as well as about a dozen elbows and T-connectors. For the points where our PVC pipes were going to be connected to our soaker hoses in our beds, we needed to connect to some valves so that we would be able to shut off each box individually. That way we can make for easier watering. We also had hose adapters. So these are PVC drip irrigation adapters, and so they will convert our PVC pipe to a garden hose size. We just snap all these together, and now we've gone from PVC and we're ready to have our soaker hose attached. We did basically the same concept with our starting point for the whole system. The only change was we didn't put a valve here, and we added a quick connect so it would be super easy to attach the hose. One really important item for this irrigation system was this valve at the end. We picked the lowest elevation spot in the garden, and that's where we had this valve added. This will allow us to drain the water that normally sits in that PVC if ever the weather is going to freeze. We don't want busted pipes. Now that we've got the entire frame dry fit perfectly, it's time to glue it all together. Thankfully, gluing is pretty easy, though it is very messy, so we highly recommend you learn from our mistakes and bring a rag out or something to wipe your fingers on. Another important note is keep track of that PVC glue can. You wouldn't want an unfortunate accident where you spilled something like PVC glue in your raised garden beds.
No! Oh!
Once we've got the whole framework glued together, it's time to measure out, cut, and add the end caps to our soaker hoses. My boxes are not all the same dimension, so rather than making a standard size for all the hoses, I just laid each one out in each box and cut it to fit. Then I added the hose adapter piece to the beginning of the soaker hose to attach to our PVC adapter, and at the end we put an end cap. Whew! Okay, I think we're done for today. All of our PVC pipe glue needs to set up for an hour before we're allowed to test it with water. So we have a little bit of time to break, which is nice, get out of the sun. And then tomorrow I have all of my garden stakes to hold my soaker hoses in place coming in. And so we'll be able to put on that finishing touch tomorrow. While we were waiting for that glue to dry, we thought of one more thing to finish up for the day. We wanted to make sure we had these PVC pipes well secured to the boxes so that they weren't potentially going to get kicked or flap around in the wind. So we got some tube straps for 1/2-inch PVC and attached them with screws. These are super secure now. All right, we got all of our pipes screwed in. They're not quite as buried as I had imagined, but you know what? A layer of mulch on the ground and they'll be totally out of sight. So I'll be happy. So I think the very last thing on this project is just to stake down our soaker hoses. And unfortunately, I don't have my stakes just yet, but don't worry, I will have them tomorrow. It's the next day. We have all our supplies now. We got the staples in the mail that we needed, and so it's time to finish this project. Now, I think a lot of people use soaker hoses on the top layer of their ground. They just set it right on top of where they've been planting. And that's really cool because you can see if your hoses are working when they're turned on, if you can see your hose. But we live in Texas, and in Texas, the summer is brutally hot. And so if I want my water to actually be useful to my plants and not just immediately evaporate into the air, I need it buried under my mulch, and a good layer of mulch too. We keep our beds mulched at least 6 inches because, you guys, it's hot here. And so that mulch really helps to keep the soil moist and not dry out so quickly. As I was finishing up this bed, I unfortunately encountered some critters. There was a fire ant bed inside of my raised garden bed. Now, thankfully, that's not the worst thing ever. Obviously, I am not planning to let them stay there because I don't want to deal with fire ant bites all garden season. But I'm also not going to put harsh chemicals on my garden because that grows the food that we eat. So I love a product called diatomaceous earth, or DE. It's made of something like crushed up fossils of like super tiny organisms. And so the way it works is those little fossilized organisms are actually made of the same stuff as those silica desiccant packages that you might get in spices or medications. And they're designed to absorb all of the moisture so that your, whatever product you're buying doesn't get wet. Well, DE works the same way. And so whenever it covers something like an insect or another garden pest, it's going to completely cover that insect's body and dehydrate it from the outside in. So this stuff is super effective on bugs or insects, anything that's in your garden that you do not want there, and it's not going to hurt people at all. And even better, there's no way for pests to develop an immunity to this, so it will work year in and year out. Make sure you apply a very generous layer and then give it a couple days to work. Thankfully, we don't need to put our plants in right away, so I have a couple days to let this sit and hopefully take care of this fire ant mound. We did it. Okay, that was a lot more work than I had expected. But you know what? The trade-off is I'm not going to have work when it's time to water all spring and summer. So totally worth it in my book. Thanks so much for following along as we get our garden ready. Next thing we're going to do is get some seeds and plant starts in the ground because spring is here and I cannot wait to see what this garden grows. Don't forget we have more goat mamas who are pregnant and giving birth soon, so we will have more of those goat birth videos for you right around the corner. We also have a pregnant pig who is due in 2 weeks, so we should have a farrowing video up for you really soon. I'm gonna go in before I get blown away by this wind. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video.